Hi, we're going to continue reading chapter 5 today. So at the beginning of chapter 5, Socks was being visited, the family was being visited by Nana. And Nana does not like cats at all. Not even a perfectly wonderful cat like Socks. She just doesn't like them. And so Socks is not sitting on any laps lately, and he has to sleep in the laundry room. Except one night, he woke up and the laundry room door was open. So, and do you remember what he saw? Nana's hair. Eek! Oh, let's go back to that part. His head cocked to one side, Socks patted the soft fibers with a curious paw. He was fascinated. He patted with his other paw. Here was something to play with, and Socks was lonely for some play. With extended claws, Socks hooked the hair from the styrofoam head and batted it over the edge of the desk. The head rolled over the edge of the desk, too, and landed beside the hair with a soft thump, which made Nana stir in her sleep. Socks sprang on the hair, caught it in his claws, tossed it into the air, and let it fall on the carpet. Then he pounced. He hugged the soft bundle of fibers with his front paws and kicked it with his strong hind feet. If you think of the word behind, like if you're standing in line with behind someone, your back behind them, right? Hind means back legs. So he's kicking it with his back legs, his hind legs. Can you see the hair? It's right there. Oh, what a wonderful toy. He rolled over with the hair still clutched to his body. With his movements muffled or quieted by the carpet, he tussled and scuffled and wrestled. He dropped the hair, hid behind a chair, and pounced again. He pretended to ignore it before he surprised it by catching it in his claws and tossing it into the air. Finally, Socks grew bored with the game. Nana's hair would not fight back. He dropped it in a patch of moonlight and settled for the night on the nylon and lace in Nana's suitcase. The next morning, Socks was awakened by Nana searching for her bedroom slippers. The hair on her head, her second best hair, was shorter and grayer than the hair on the carpet. Socks yawned so hard that his ears lay back and his pink tongue stretched out of his mouth. He eased his muscles by humping his back like a Halloween cat and leaped onto the carpet, where he proceeded with his morning wash. "Well," said Nana in a whisper, "just what do you think you're doing in here?" Socks did not care for the tone of her voice. He paused long enough to give her a look, as if to say, "I belong here, and you do not," before he continued licking his fur. Soon he turned his head away from Nana to reach the difficult spot behind his shoulder. Nana, who had not rested well on the lumpy couch, was buttoning her robe when she noticed the naked styrofoam head on the floor. She was quick to discover her best hair on the carpet. With an angry "Oh!" she snatched it up and stared at it while Socks pretended to ignore her. The Brickers were awake. Water ran in the bathroom, and Mr. Bricker's electric razor buzzed. You cat," Nana whispered. "Look what you've done." Socks looked, but not for long. Grooming his immaculate white paws was more important. He found a bit of dried mud between his toes, which needed attention. Nana examined the netting inside the wig, and in the desk drawer she found some tape, which she used for some hasty repairs. Then she set what had once been her best hair on the styrofoam head and went to work with her hairbrush. She smoothed and brushed. She patted and poked. She pinched waves into place and rolled the ends over her fingers. When she was sure the bathroom was free, she picked up the hair and her clothes and stalked out of the living room. To stalk is to walk angrily. Charles William began to fuss. Socks was waiting by the refrigerator when Mrs. Bricker arrived to warm a bottle. "Out of the way, Socks," said Mrs. Bricker, giving him a gentle shove with her foot so she could open the refrigerator door. Socks meowed and rubbed against her ankles while she set a bottle in a pan of water on the stove. Mr. Bricker appeared with Charles William, still dressed in jammies, in his arms. "Mommy is getting her baby's breakfast just as soon as she can," said Mrs. Bricker, in the voice that Socks did not like when it was not addressed to him. He likes the baby voice. He doesn't think it's fair that anyone else should get the baby voice. Nana joined the family in the kitchen. The sight of her hair silenced her daughter-in-law and made her son stare. Odd little bits poked out from the once smooth curls. The silence, broken by the quivery sobs of the hungry baby, was awkward. "Mom, what happened to your hair?" asked her son. He did not like that his mother wore a wig. The Brickers thought hair should look natural. "Nothing," said Nana bravely. "It was nothing, really. Nothing a trip to the hairdresser won't repair." Mr. Bricker was not satisfied. "Something must have happened to make your hair look like a bird's nest." A bird's nest. Oh boy, look at how bad it is. Am I on the right side? Look. Whoa. That's terrible. "Bill," Mrs. Bricker's voice held a warning, as Socks purred and rubbed against her legs. He was every bit as hungry as Charles William, but he was much pleasanter. Nana frowned at Socks in spite of all his charm. "Socks," said Mrs. Bricker, "did you get into Nana's hair?" Attention at last. Socks stood on his hind legs with his front paws against Mrs. Bricker and increased the noise of his purr. "Oh, you bad cat!" Mrs. Bricker unhooked his claws from her robe. Charles William drooled and wept. The water on the stove began to bubble and splash over the edge of the pan, hissing at it as it hit the burners. "Now see what you made me do. The bottle is too hot and it takes forever to cool." She removed the pan from the stove and replaced the boiling water with cold water. Socks did not care for the way he was being treated. These people were wasting too much time. They neither fed him nor took care of the baby. "Nana, I'm terribly sorry," said Mrs. Bricker. "I was sure Socks was shut in the laundry room. I guess we didn't give the door that little extra shove. If you don't give it that shove—" "Now, Marilyn, don't worry about a thing," said Nana, who was determined not to cause trouble. "I'll have my wig washed and set at a beauty shop, and everything will be all right. Now, what can I do to help?" That's an awfully nice way to react. I thought she would freak out and insist that Socks be given away. "In a minute, you can give Charles William his cereal." Mrs. Bricker tripped over Socks on her way to the cupboard for a cup. "Everything is so hectic because we forgot to set the alarm." Socks had waited long enough for these chattering people. Charm had not worked. Being nice and just pretty is charming. His patience was at an end. He nipped at Mrs. Bricker's ankle to remind her that he wanted his breakfast and he wanted it now. You know what a nip is, right? A nip is a small bite. 2 tiny drops of blood appeared on her leg. "Marilyn, that cat bit you!" Nana was shocked. "You're bleeding!" "Socks!" Mr. Bricker shouted in such a terrible voice that Socks was stunned. Never had his owner spoken to him that way. He cringed against a cupboard and looked up at Mr. Bricker with wide, frightened eyes. A fussy, teething baby, a husband in a hurry to leave for his job and his classes, the strain of a mother-in-law in a house too small for guests, papers waiting to be typed, and a biting cat were all too much for Mrs. Bricker. "Bill, get that cat out of here," she said with tears in her voice. "Please get that cat out of here before I go out of my mind." To his astonishment, Socks, who had not meant to hurt Mrs. Bricker, found himself lifted and dumped out the back door without so much as a kind word or a bite of breakfast. He messed up this time, didn't he? He messed up bad. Oof. He stood lashing his tail in anger, and in a few minutes, when he began to understand that no one was going to let him in, he jumped up to the window sill of the dining room window where he could see Nana holding Charles William and spooning cereal into his mouth. Mrs. Bricker, with a Band-Aid on her ankle, was dropping bread into a toaster, and Mr. Bricker was pouring cereal from a box. Socks meowed to let his owners know he was angry, hungry, and unfairly treated. "Beat it, you cat," said Mr. Bricker as he reached for a carton of milk. "We can't have a cat that bites in this house." "Oi, doi, doi!" shouted Charles William, happy to be eating breakfast at last and secure in the love of his family. Oh boy, poor Socks. Everything's going wrong, and then he makes a big mistake. I wonder if he'll be forgiven. What do you think?